Little bumpy. 400ths of a second. That's less than the blink of an eye.
Good morning and welcome to Innsbruck in Austria, where we are for the first and second race weekends of the BMW IBSF Bobsleigh and Skeleton World Cup. Day 2 of the season sees the women in action for the first time with the Monobob series. This was introduced in the World Cup and across the globe last season, and this will be the first big race of the year for a lot of our Monobob sliders. Martin Haven and John Morgan looking at the action with you this morning from a track, John, where we saw these women in action last year in these sleds, and one that they will all know well.
Yeah, it's a great track, very easy to come down, it's short 1,200 meters. Cynthia Appia, well, we saw her do a breakout season last year, the best start in the field, and it's going to be tough to match her again here today with that start time she's got. No mistakes up top here, Martin, and you know, these monobobs don't go as straight as the 2-mans or 4-mans. They're a little bit more of a challenge, and you know, it's still a maturing discipline. And the athletes, you know, they don't have hundreds of trips down the track in these vehicles. I would say some of these athletes have got less than 100. So, you know, it's great to see all the nations that are competing. This exit of 9, very challenged. Down here in the labyrinths, this is where these sleds get a little squirrely. They're not as heavy as the 2-mans. Up into a finish curve that goes uphill. And now the brakeman, there's no brakeman. They got to get on the brakes. So the drivers, the brakeman. New discipline, Martin. Very, very interesting.
And you're absolutely right about bringing in new nations, smaller nations who may not have the resources and the athletes to put together 2 athlete sleds. That's exactly what the deal is here, to try and bring in new athletes, new nations. So we've got a whole host of regular World Cup stars, plus some other names to conjure with. 28 sleds in the entry. There's Brianna Walker from Australia, and she is, well, one of the benchmarks, definitely, in the women's monobob field. Cynthia Appia of Canada, another very strong push athlete turned driver. And that is part of the key to success here, John. You've got to do it all yourself. So if you're a strong driver physically, then that definitely helps, because you're humping the sled off the line without any assistance. So it's going to be interesting to see just how this works out. 29 sleds, and maybe we should be looking right in the middle of our field. The World Championship was held in Altenburg in February last year, and 2 of our 3 World Championship medalists are in the field. Kaylee Humphries, who took the gold, Laura Nolter of Germany, who took the bronze, are here. But we're glad to welcome back Chinese sliders as well. So Qing Ying and Wai Mingming are both here, along with, for the first time, Lydia Hunko of the Ukraine and Simi Atabago of Nigeria. Women's Monobob World Series gets underway here. Race 1 in Innsbruck, Austria. Martin Haven, John Morgan watching as Cynthia Appia gets us underway. The 31-year-old Canadian, 4th in the last race here in Innsbruck, 5th in the World Championships. A very strong push athlete, but a little dink on the wall right away from the start.
Well, she's the best starter in the field, Martin, and we're going to be watching her the whole way down the track here, of course, but she finished 3rd in this event over in Yanqing, China, 3 weeks ago. So you talk about somebody coming out of nowhere and putting themselves in a chance to win a medal at this year's Olympics. This athlete here has come out of nowhere in the last month, the last 10 months. She might have the least amount of bobsled trips of anybody. She's not on the 2-man World Cup last year, Martin, just in monobob.
No, she wasn't in the World Cup, but she has raced 2-man. In fact, she and one of her teammates, brand new track record, so that shows just what a good state the track is in.
Well, we saw the track yesterday. We're getting within 3/10 of the track record in men's skeleton.
Yep. And we had a start record tied in women's skeleton. Cynthia didn't quite get to her start record, which is a 5:76, but she's tied the track record of Brianna Walker, which was set in January.
Well, that's a little challenge into curve 8. Here, look at that little airborne. That's down in the labyrinths. First part of the labyrinths. She's got to be happy with that track record, Martin. I bet you it's not our last.
No, it may not be, actually, given the way she's shaking her head. There were a few mistakes creeping in. Next up, 23-year-old from Russia, Anastasia Makarova, raced these sleds in the World Championships to 19th place. She's had 3 official races in monobob, best of which was a 6th place in the field in Winterberg. Well, last year's Monobob World Series actually heavily favoured those who were racing only in North America. They had half a dozen races. Not all of our athletes competed in all of the races in Europe.
Well, start time, second best, speed, second best, of course. You know, loud, sounds very loud, this sled, Martin.
Yeah. Well, all the sleds are purpose-built by a company in Bavaria. It is a spec sled, so you buy the sled, the price is fixed, the equipment that you get with it is all exactly the same. And they use similar runners to a 2-seat sled, but a little different to allow for the fact that the sled is different size, balance, and weight. Nice-looking run from Makarova, but she needs a good run because, yeah, well, the start was 3/10 back, so she needs that good run.
That's the whole thing right there.
Yeah.
36. She made a comeback on the bottom. A short 1,200-meter track. The start, we saw it yesterday, but the start, a couple of them German athletes didn't have good starts yesterday and had great finish times, so that was skeleton, though.
Well, here she has not had the brakes on early enough and runs out at the end of the ice up onto the rubber matting.
Well, look at the runner tips. Drift.
She's not had a bad looking drive, though.
No, no, that's the start. You can't, look. And they got to hump the sleds, and of course, we started right away. Melanie Hassler's been doing pretty good, you know.
Yeah, been doing very well in the 2-seater sleds. 10th in the World Championships.
How about second 3 weeks ago at the test in China? So she made a statement there.
There were 2 World Cup races here for Monobob last year. She was in 4th place in the first of them. She didn't race in the second one, but she finished 5th overall in the Monobob World Series last year. 3,300s back. And a number of the athletes, John, driving the monobobs today have had to split their practice between monobob and the 2-seater sleds that they'll race tomorrow. So that's a real handicap, is trying to get your head around different equipment.
Yeah.
The female drivers haven't had to do that as they've grown up the way the men do. There's a familiar face. You can't see much of it, but I recognize those eyes of Rico Peter. So Melanie Hassler, second at the moment.
The reckless driver, we used to call him. He wouldn't steer. He'd just let it go. Good start. I mean,
yeah.
You know, this. You always say who's the best starter, who's got the best brakeman. Nah, not a here. It's the driver is the brakeman. That's the human-powered rocket up top.
Well,
good drive down the track.
Yeah, gave away 1800s to Cynthia Appia at the start, came in 1300s back, so she outdrove Appia comfortably. Next up, Mariama Yamanka. So, Olympic champion in women's bob. She finished 9th here in the race in January. She was 8th in the first race in Innsbruck, finished 4th in the World Championships was not a fan to start with. However, it's an Olympic discipline, so whether you're a fan or not, John, you get on with it and you learn how to drive.
Well, she also won the race in Yanqing just 3 weeks ago. So obviously she has changed her mind about this sport.
There you go. And it's time, you know, it's ice time. Like everything else, it's so different from the two-seater sleds that she's been used to. It takes time to learn it. But the carrot on the end of the stick there, John, is it's an Olympic medal.
Yep, sure is. And this was the whole purpose. You skid there. Gender equality, they were trying to get 4-man, 4-women bobsled in, just not enough teams and athletes and countries to participate. The Monobob, we got 29 sleds here from what, 15 countries, 13 countries? That's pretty impressive.
4/10 back. She's not going to bring it back to the line. Third place, 3100s back. And again, you can see why in a longer track, like the track in Beijing, having a slower start is not all that it's about. Having a better drive is definitely going to be the deal. I'm liking the new helmet this year for Mariama Yamanka.
Right here, Martin, things got away from her a little bit coming out of the Kreisel. Tap, skid. Look at this, skidding into the curve.
Interesting to see how much she was leaning inside the sled. Now, drivers talk about that occasionally. Instead of making a steer, you'll just nudge the sled, literally with your body. She was riding that sled like a motorcycle, using the body weight to her advantage.
First time I ever saw that was the East Germans way back in the day, Martin. That leaning in and out of the curves.
Qingying of China, 24 years old, did not race away from Beijing last year. 6 World Cup races 2 seasons ago, the best of which was 8th here, but of course that was in a 2-seater sled. But she was impressing the way that she was getting to grips with bobsled.
Well, decent start, Martin. First time we've ever seen this athlete.
Yep.
And you know,
the 6 flat, she outstarted Yamanka. She was only 100th away from Melanie Hassler, so she's definitely got some power behind her. And I'm sure she's had plenty of trips in Beijing in the sleds. There was nothing else for them to do all year last year. Oh, a little high.
Yeah, but that, to me, can be almost boring, you know? And I think you have to go out and look at your fellow competitors.
Yeah. Well, if the world had been a different place, they
Martin, what's that
been.
say? Come on, Martin, you know you're Chinese yet? You know what that says?
Of the many, many languages I don't speak, Chinese is one of them, and I definitely don't read Chinese.
I'll just take a guess. I think it said hello, Martin Haven.
Hi, Mom.
Might be wrong. Hi, Mom.
Yeah. Most signs generally say hi, Mom, or hello, everybody back home, don't they? Yeah, I'm sure the Chinese were hugely frustrated at not being able to come out and sort of refine their skills in a different environment last season, but we all know the reasons why so little movement happened.
Well, Martin, mistakes up there in the pivotal part of the track, the exit of 9. You can't skid like that into the speed part of the track. But Martin, I'm looking at Cynthia Appia. She has just blown everybody away with that start time. No one's come close. We might see one here.
Christine Brown of Canada, 32-year-old, 16th in the World Championships. Didn't really have a great time in Altenburg, but a 6 flat start, so the same as Qingying of China.
What's, a very accomplished athlete here in mono and the 2-woman bob discipline. If there's anybody that's going to challenge her teammate, it's Cynthia.
3 races in Monobob last year, the best of which was a 7th place finish in Koenigsegg. While I mentioned
World
that.
Championships. She's on pace now for 2nd.
Yeah, 1900s behind Cynthia at the start, so she's got as close as anybody.
She might get it down to single digits, but she... There,
400s,
look at that.
wow, that's a great drive at the bottom.
1900s down at the start, only 4 at the bottom. Needless to say, she drove that sled.
Yep. And that's going to be her advantage. The longer the track, the better she's going to fare in recovering from the start deficit to a real power athlete like Appia.
Well, this is much better than we saw the Chinese sled, but still not perfect. You can see a little bit of a waver there. You know, the sleds, Martin, seem to be becoming not as uncontrollable as we saw them the first time out.
There you go, yeah. Post-season practice and pre-season practice have really helped. I think the coaches and the athletes get their head around what these sleds require compared to everything they know already. Well, lots of the athletes here are drivers. There are a couple who have come straight from the back seat into Monobob. Nadezhda Sergeva started her bobsledding career as a brakewoman, but has been driving for the best part of a decade. She won the first Monobob World Series race last year in Winterberg. That was her only podium, finished 7th overall in the points, was 5th here in Innsbruck, and 12th in the World Champs.
And she was 9th in the pre-Olympic event in Yanqing a few weeks ago.
Well, she's got closest to Cynthia Appia at the start. You can see her brakewoman heritage, 591, so a 10th back, and she's drifting away a little.
Well, that 2200, so she stops the bleeding, gets that down into, say, 17 or 18. No, she's bleeding more time back, so she's not going to catch her. She won't catch De Bruin either, so she made some driving errors real high there in curve 10. 30. Yeah, she's on pace for like around Jamaica, so probably 4th. Yeah.
300 ahead of Mariama Yamanka. Yeah, 4th place.
Yeah, so she had a chance with that start time. Now there's the brakeman didn't put the brakes on, so the driver can't blame the brakeman.
Well, that's interesting because the other sled that ran up there onto the rubber was her teammate Anastasia Makarova.
Well, the Russians need to do something to their brakes on these sleds. Now they're going to turn it sideways.
The deal with the rubber there is that it tends to be full of grit and dirt, and that ends like an abrasive paper on the runners.
Well, the drift down here out of curve 9 to 10, not perfect. Look how high she gets there. That's the highest lines we've seen in the big curve 10. And here she's yelling at her brakeman to put the brakes on, but she's the brakeman. Okay, here's one of the favorites in the field.
Yeah, definitely. Laura Nolte finished in 3rd place in the World Championships, the 23-year-olds. 3 races, 2 seconds and a 3rd in her career so far.
6th in Yanqing just a few weeks ago. 1900s back, that's relative to the start. Again, she keeps this at 19 or 20 the next clock, she's got a chance. 21.
Silver medalist in the first race here last year, John, so she definitely has medal potential.
Here she comes. Here she comes. Let's see if she can challenge the 2 Canadian sleds that are down. That's not too bad. Speed doesn't give us the rank. 600, she's going to be the leader, Martin. Better speed than anybody. Here she comes.
Well, this is kind of what we've expected from Laura Nolte, a brand new track record. There we go, that's what you needed.
Martin, she just hung in there, that deficit at the start. Stopped the bleeding around Kreisel. Ooh, she hear her yell, ah!
Yeah.
You know, but she shows she's got the eyes and hands.
And the power at the start as well, a 93.
3rd best start.
Yeah.
3rd best starts. You can live with the 3rd best start. She had the 6th and 7th best starts in China there a few weeks ago. New track record. I bet you the track record still has got someone else might put their name on it. Look how low she is in the cowling. The clear visor. A lot of people with the darker visors. Germans are pretty high on this young athlete.
And so they should be. Great shoe art for Austria's Kathi Beil, 3rd in the first race here in Innsbruck, but she had a back problem, didn't start the 2nd race here last year. 8th in the World Championships. She had 2 third-place finishes in last year's Monobob World Series. So again, a good, strong driver, really knows this track well. She will give away at the start. It's a 6:10. What can she find on the ice?
Great season for her last year. She won the World Cup title, and she came here in Innsbruck, the last event, to win the World Cup title. And just like her teammate Skeleton, Janine Flock won the World Cup title. But Catherine, we know she can drive. She just gives up so much time at the start that she has to be perfect, and she knows where the Austrian shortcut is on this track. But Martin, she's so far back in the start, it's tough to overcome that deficiency.
Speed's not there, and she's made a couple of mistakes as well.
Yeah, she might get into 7th with her skills down below in the speed part of the track, but the start time sentenced her to her finish time 8th. 6,400s back. She's a good ways back, 2,100s from Makarova.
Yeah.
Look at the USA.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of that. Is that Lauren Gibbs there helping slow the sled? It was definitely her regular brakewoman. There's Jennifer Onosanya at the back, waiting with a catcher's mitt.
Runner tips, friction. You can see some spray. That wasn't perfect. Not many people are. Gives us a chance to criticize.
Well, next up for Belgium and Van Nieuwenhuis. Big day for Belgium yesterday in women's skeleton. Kim Marmans claiming her first ever World Cup medal and finished in 14th place in the second race here. They didn't have a sled for race 1 and finished 20th in the World Championship. She will give away at the start and then try and find it further on down the track.
She wasn't at the event in China there a few weeks ago. So Anne, another one that has suspect start times, the 10th best start of 10. But we know she can drive, you know, and she has a perfect run here. She could move up into the top 7 or so, but pretty tough to overcome that on this short 1,200-meter track. The track in China will favor her skill.
Yep.
Oh, that's a rough transition there.
Yep.
10th best speed. She's got number 10 all the way down the track. That's probably the best line out of curve 9 we've seen from anyone so far of the 10 sleds down. Yeah, Belgium yesterday, that was impressive. That might have been her best run of her life, Martin, when she was first in the first heat. I was rooting for her. I was rooting for her to bring it home.
Yeah, I think everybody was, and Van Nieuwenhuis runs out of ice as well. This is definitely something that the athletes and teams are going to have to look at. And clearly, John, this didn't happen in training, so the track is much quicker. That was a bumpy transition, though.
Yeah, we've had 2 track records, and we probably still have a chance for another one before we're done here.
But 3 of our 10 sleds have shot off the end of the ice, so there is clearly an issue that the teams were not expecting. Lauren Alter leads from Cynthia Appia. 10 down and 18 to go. Next up, Martina Fontenev of Switzerland, 9th in the World Championships. Didn't do race 1 here. She was entered, but pulled out with injury, and she didn't start the second race, so we've got no idea of her form here, other than her couple of training runs.
13th at the event in China, Martin, so...
Yeah.
And she had the 13th best start time, or excuse me, 11th at the event in China, 13th best starts. Again, if you have the 11th best start, you should have 11th or better at the bottom.
The races she did last year, she was 2nd in Winterberg, 3rd in St. Moritz in the World Cup counters, and finished 4th overall in the points. So she did have a good season. This doesn't play to her strengths, though.
Well, start, deficiency, short 1,200-meter track, that's not a good cocktail for winning a medal.
Lines are good, though. She's got good control.
Well, she's a good driver. We know that.
Yep.
Speed's great down here in the speed part of the course. She's right up there with the speed.
So ahead of An van Nieuwenhuis and Qing Ying of China, 9th place. She was 200ths quicker than Anne at the start, John, 600ths quicker at the bottom. That's the formula, 3-1, start deficit to finish deficit, exactly on the money.
Yeah, 10th best start, 9th best. 9th best. You know, the labyrinths, Martin, they come up on you pretty quick. And some people, especially her coach, who wouldn't steer down here. Now watch these, watch the back end of the sled here. You know, almost a little skid there. And here, watch this. Look at the back rudder up in the air. Look at that's weird, Martin. I don't know if I've ever seen that.
No,
That's
but we see
Monobob.
the four-man airborne a lot there, don't we? Because the transition is so rapid.
But the runners,
For
look at
Romania, Andreea Grecu, former brakewoman turned driver, 11th in the Worlds. She was 6th in the first race here, 8th in the second. And again for Romania, it's a chance to double their involvement, John, for a reasonable outlay, and that's what it's all about.
I was going to say good starter. She had the 34th best start times in King. She finished 12th there, but today she hit the 4th.
She's 300s behind leader Lara Nolter, but 1500s is the gap. That's definitely manageable if she has a good run down. This could leave her in the top 3.
Ooh, jinxed her, Martin.
Yeah, I know. Didn't need that.
Commentator's jinx. 4,500. She's hanging in there. This could be Catherine Veal, about 8th place.
Yeah. 9th at the line, 55.9.
Lost a lot of time.
Yeah,
Lost a lot of time
behind Cathy
on the track.
Yeah, she was getting pretty loose down there going into the labyrinth as well.
4th best start time, Martin. 9th best finish. We've seen her have some good results into 2 women's, Bob. The climb into 8, 9.
Yeah, climbs a little high there and has to haul it off.
Runner tips. Doesn't take much to figure out that friction. You can see the snow like, ooh.
Yeah.
That's worth a 10th.
Well, that's why you don't see Indy cars going sideways. It's not quick. Well, here definitely is a real hot candidate for Olympic glory. Kaylee Humphries, 2-time women's bobsleigh Olympic champion. She is the first ever monobob world champion. She claimed that title in February in Altenburg. 3 races last year, 3 wins. And John, she started, Kaylee Sigmundson, as a brakewoman. We know she's among the most powerful in the field, 5.95.
That's about it. She in China, she was 5th in the competition. She had the 6th best start. Here she's got the 4th. She'll end up with the 6th best start. A couple more athletes to beat her, but look at that. She's already overcome the start deficiency. We know about this athlete's eyes and hands. Just watch these lines. She's 100th back, so she made a mistake there. Now she's coming late. Remember, Appia went for the first one down, so had the great ice.
Well, the real big question mark over Kaylee Humphries and the Olympics, of course, is whether or not she goes. Not whether or not she wants to go, it's whether or not she gets American citizenship in time. 55.27, 200s back.
Brian Scheimer, the longtime coach of the U.S. program.
Okay, guys,
Brian,
get to the sled. Yeah, the teams have got to be there quicker.
I think they're all going to go sharpen those brakes because that's half the field's going up there, Martin. And
yeah,
boy, if you look at Kaylee, 4th best start, and she lost by 200ths at the start. She lost by 200ths at the bottom. She drove a better sled, and we're dealing with, oh boy, those runners were a hard steer off that curve 9. That wasn't perfect. Look at the speed. Great graphics from our team. Look at that. Oh. Now they're being very delicate in the way they...
Yeah.
Some
You
happy
can see
ladies.
some of the drivers going back in the sled. Yeah, the sophisticated means of getting the sled back up to the top. This is Russia's Lyubov Chernik, 26 years old. She only raced in the World Championships, had no prior monobob races last year, and finished in 17th place. So this is still very new to her. I'm sure in Sochi, when they did post and pre-season training, John, she spent a lot of time in this sled.
Yeah, 14th at the China pre-Olympic test, Yanqing Track. Sliding sports facility there. That is about 250, 300 meters longer than this. Net best speed, right about where she started, 3/10 back. You know, she could crack the top 10 with good lines. That's not bad, Martin. She tapped once, took her mistake, and went straight from there.
Well, fourth and fifth at the moment. Fourth and fifth, Christina Brown and Melanie Hassler off similar starts. So she didn't drive as well as they did.
Well, Martin, 9th best start, 9th best finish. And she might get the award for going, she might have gone up farther than anybody.
That's not going to help, is it, on the second run? Because the runners are normally polished to mirror perfection for reducing friction.
Look at the back end of the sled there. She steered hard there, a 9. Like we saw Kaylee Humphries, too, though. Watch the runner tips here. She's getting off. Well, pretty good there, but she's caused that skid, that little check she made middle of the curve. She was flat coming on there in the exit, and that caused the skid. But friction.
And there will be more friction as the runners get scuffed up by that gritty rubber. It's not intentionally gritty, that's just what happens in life. Next up, Wai Ming of China, 26 years old. Didn't see her race last season like all of her compatriots. She was locked down in China. 6 World Cup races in the 2019-20 season, the best of which was here. She finished in 9th place. That's still her best World Cup result, and 5.99. That's pretty a good start. Yeah, both Chinese athletes got away right around the 6-second mark.
I'd like to know when this athlete was recruited, Martin. The first athletes we saw very few of the female athletes.
Well,
I'm sure last year.
Both the drivers here were on World Cup Tour 2 seasons ago. So by that stage, I think they'd been driving maybe 18 months.
Yeah. You know, and it's, you know, I like to know what sports they come from. Track and field, that's where they went recruiting heavy.
Should dig back in my old notes. The language barrier is a bit of a thing, though. 56.04, 12th spot for our 15th athlete.
Martin, we should start talking about who's going to make the cut.
Well, there is that. She's ahead of Martina Fontenev, Anne van Nieuwenhuis, and teammate Qing Ying as well. So she should be in. And by the way, it's not just monobobs in the World Cups. In the World Cup, we also have monobobs racing in North America. So Jamaica with 2 sleds. Jasmine Fenlater and Carrie Russell, for instance, racing in North America at the moment.
And there's the Europa Cup monobob, too.
Yeah,
right?
exactly so.
And it's total points. There's a process to determine which 3 countries get 2 sleds, and then 7 countries, I think, or 9 countries get 1 sled.
Misha McNeil of Great Britain, 5th in the first race here, 12th in the second. She has got a degree of monobob experience on the original plank sleds that didn't have the articulation, and a little bit more on this current sled as well.
Well, Misha, as we know, does surprise us every once in a while in the 2 women's bob with good heat up top the leaderboard in one race, Whistler, some event, and
Altenburg, you know, that was, wasn't it? Yeah, led after the first heat.
But you can't, you know, she depends so much on a perfect drive down the track. You can't do that every time, because you have to have that perfect drive with a deficient start. It's hard to be perfect consecutively in this sport.
This is looking like a nice run. 14th at the start, she's up to 11th, aiming for the top 10, 12th at the line, 55.93, 200s behind Andrea Grecu. And Grecu outstarted her by 1500s of a second, so pretty decent drive. There's Mika, her brake woman, spelt the same, pronounced differently.
You know, just pretty much the norm for everything we've seen coming down the track. She corrected very well. She hit the wall and let it come straight.
"16 sleds down. Next up, Germany's Kim Kalicki. 6th in the final race here, 7th in the first race. She was also 6th in the World Championships in Altenburg. 24 years old and one of the new coming faces in German bobsleigh. Her, Lara Nolte, just left a trail of devastation behind them last year in grabbing medals.
10th in the event China, Martin. She has got the 11th and 12th best start times there. You know, and, you know, here it's pretty much the same.
10th, 1600s back. That is a definitely surmountable gap.
If she gets it to 19 or 20, she has a chance. There's 21. That does. She's got a chance for a top 3, 7th best speed. That's relative to the start. 2500's back, 8th best speed. She needs to get like a top 3 speed here.
Oh, mistake there is going to cost her.
Top
Now,
3
can she
speed.
find it? A little late coming into the labyrinth.
No, we don't have any speeds down below. 8th though, Martin. It's got 8 written all over it. 9th.
Well,
I think the
112 kilometers an hour at the bottom compared to 113.7 of Kaylee Humphries.
I think
Comes
we
into
got
the station quick, and Kristen Strack rushing after her, but doesn't get there.
I think she's got coming late in the heat, Martin. I really think the track, ooh, real high here on the labyrinths. Second
Super
one
late.
here. And the back end of the sled.
And there, John, you're really hustling. You know, that's a quarterback scramble there. You're just trying not to crash it, and that is just robbing you of speed. So Kim Kalicki comes across the line and down in 9th place. Next up for France, Margot Bock. 22 years old. 9th in the first World Cup race here. She didn't race in the second one. She was 8th in St. Moritz, though. So 2 races last season in the Monobob in the World Cup level races. And there was no loading for the quality of the field. You got the same number of points for winning a thinly populated North America's Cup race as you did for a full-fat World Cup race last year. Not sure if that has changed for this season, though.
She was listed on the start sheet for the event in China, Martin, but did not compete. DNS. That says did not start. She was there.
Well, she may have been training, she may have been nursing an injury. They may have decided that focusing on the 2-seater sleds might be giving them better dividends.
Ooh, big nose change there, and that's why she was a little rough on the exit of 9. 5400s, you know, 12th place, 13th place. Sleds have been losing time on the bottom. 11th, Martin, she came back. We've seen the last 3 or 4 sleds come down, and on the bottom, oh, she's flying up here. She's gonna
Nope.
Oh. And she did well on the bottom part of the track. Her speed.
Yep. We've seen so many sleds, John, getting late into the lower labyrinth, and that just robs them of all their speed. If you can get on at least on time rather than early, then you've got a better chance. But, wow,
look at that runner. Look how late she got. She scraped some ice off on the outlet of that exit. No one was up there in that spot, like in that position. not that it was dangerous, but it was definitely dangerous for her time.
So next up, another real strong potential candidate. Silver medalist in the World Championships in February, Alana Myers-Taylor. I beg your pardon, silver medalist here, Alana Myers-Taylor. Only 15th in the Worlds. She didn't do the first race here. There wasn't a sled available, but she finished second.
Should be Martin 583. There it is. A couple hundreds off.
583, yeah.
Cynthia Appia, just looking at the sheets, she was 8th in the event in China, but she had the second and first best start times.
Yeah.
Finished 8th. But Martin, look at these numbers, 1300s, but that's against our leader, Laura Nolte, who had a big speed in the bottom part of the track. So she's lost 11. 9 speed, that's not good for the number she had up top at the start. She's holding at 9. Got a neat top 3 speed down here, Martin.
Yeah, she's close to Nolte in terms of pace. This is going to be very close at the line.
500's going right to the 100th, right to the 100th, yeah. Martin.
Kaylee Humphries had the best speed at the bottom. What's Alana got? A new track record.
We have a tie. Track
we
record.
have a dead heat. So
hello,
she ties the track record with Laura Nolte.
And
grab the sled. There's no point waving at her.
Martin, how many sleds have stopped like that? Maybe 3?
Yeah.
3 of the 13 of all the ones coming down. So remember where she's starting in this heat. She started late in this heat.
That's a leading run.
Look how far back she's leaning in the sled.
Yeah,
right
she
there.
is sitting over the rear axle.
Back.
Now, is that a way of getting the sled to behave a little bit more in a balanced manner? The further forward you see it, yeah.
We'll have to see what Kaylee Humphries drives. Alana?
That's very interesting.
Okay, Melissa Lotholtz, another former
Melissa
brakeman.
Lotholtz, yeah, 3rd place here in the race here in January. She was 7th in the Worlds. Melissa also won non-World Cup races in Monobob last season as she and Cynthia Appia were qualifying to get up to World Cup level. 600s is the lead.
Well, she's the 3rd best starter in the field, Martin, so she's another one starting late. She gets to the bottom here at a very competitive time. She could be challenging for a medal, too.
Yeah, didn't start as quickly as Alana Myers-Taylor. Outstarted Laura Nolte.
There's the red numbers now. Not by much. This will be a top 4 or 5 run. 600's back. She's hanging in there. Going to be 3 Canadians in the top 5, I can tell you that.
Yeah. Oh, just outside. 6th place.
She fell a little bit. The Porsche lost a lot of time on the bottom. But the Canadians are in 4, 5, and 6. And that former Canadian called Humphries is in 3rd. Germany atop of the leaderboard. She's happy with that, but she always is happy.
And she got on the brakes in plenty of time as well.
Yeah. Drove right off into that wall. Okay, hit, it comes straight. Nah, didn't come straight. That's, Martin, she could have been our leader.
Well, 1500s, John, cover the top 6 sleds. This is a tight race. This is classic Innsbruck stuff. You could see a medal from any of those top half dozen. 20 sleds down, still 8 to go, including Brianna Walker, who was the track record holder this morning. Winner of the last race here. In fact, she won both World Cup encounters in women's monobob here. So the Aussie, like a lot of her fellow drivers, races the 2-seater sled, but a 588 getaway. She's a very strong push athlete. She hasn't been home in nearly 18 months. Spent last summer and this summer in Germany training with the German squads. Just basic power and speed training.
Yeah, she was 7th in the China event, Martin, and she had the 3rd and 4th best start times there. And,
Only the 10th best speed. She's still in the green numbers by a whisker, but the speed
14th
isn't
best
there.
speed there, so it's going to be red here pretty quick, I would think, Martin. There it is.
Not major
Now,
issues, but there's clearly some setup problem with the sled. She's bleeding time.
still hanging in there, Martin. Could get in the top 6. Challenging Melissa Lowholtz for 6 here. She ducks her head.
Dives to
there
the
it
line.
is.
She is
She
in
beats
6th.
Lowholtz by 300s, 200s. I like the way she dove, or she put her head over the cowling there in the finish. That tells you how much confidence she's got now in the sport.
Well, would have been better if she hadn't hit the wall on the way out there, though.
Martin, pretty soon we're going to get an email from her dad who communicates with us. He's watching down in Australia. But look at this. This is a pretty good drive. She did come off late, but she hit and came straight, Martin. And got on to 10 early on her turn. Watch her duck her head here. Flying blind right there. And she thought she did tap before the finish line.
Yeah. Well, first of 2 Australian drivers in this field. The first time I think we've ever seen 2 Australian sleds in any World Cup race. In bobsleigh, that is. Don't skeleton me about that. Giada Andreotti of Italy, 26-year-old, has not raced monobob.
First time ever we've seen her.
Yeah, well, she's raced women's bobsleigh for the last couple of seasons, done a few World Cup starts, but did no monobob races last year.
The coach on the right walking away, Manuel Mahada, 2011 world champion in 4-man bobsled, coaching the Italian program. Start time, 22nd at the start, Martin. She's going to struggle to make the cut at that start.
She's one of 2 drivers that Italy had in the World Cup in the last couple of seasons. And both of them learning the ropes fast.
Well, she's doing pretty good for speed for that deficient start time and pretty good lines. Hope I don't jinx her.
7th best speed.
Yeah.
Wow, Manny Mahata's breathed on the sled. And
one of the best exits
drive.
of 9 we've seen. She could do down here. She's getting, she's still though. She's so far back in the start. Even with these great speeds, she's not going to overcome that start deficiency.
20th at the line. So she has 2 sleds behind her. Scroll down the screen. So Qingying of China is out, and Anne van Nieuwenhuis of Belgium is out as well. And Giada Andreotti at the moment is in.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a pretty strange lineup coming at us. Ukrainian, Nigerian, Slovakian athletes we have never seen before. These are great lines. Look at this. How many sleds have come down? But Martin, is that too much control?
Well, the speed was good, though. She was in the top 10 speeds, not hanging out in the bottom of the 20s. Simone Bertazzo down there helping with the sled. And this is Ashley Werner. Now, we saw Ashley as a brakewoman last season. She has not appeared as a driver before now. And this is exactly, of course, what we've seen from Cynthia Appia, Melissa Lotholtz. So the Aussie, a former Rugby Sevens player. So, John, you've got plenty to talk about with Ashley Werner.
Yeah, she hung out in Lake Placid a little bit, did some training in March. She was here in November. You know, she's got the bug, and, you know, the 19th best start, though.
Well, if she can hold that, she's in the field. Right now, on the bubble, Giada Andreotti. Martina Fontenev is 19th. Good lines, John.
Yeah, still, though, 20th position.
Yeah,
sometimes he's... Martin, sometimes, look at this 3rd best speed. Can that be true?
Well,
if she's 3rd, then she should be moving up, though. I'm a little suspicious of the speeds.
Yeah,
she should be moving up. Here she comes, 18. She's going to be in the field, though, Martin.
She survives this. She's in the race. 17th, she's in the race.
Okay.
So she is in, and Martina Fontenev is on the bubble. Giada Andreotti is out, and Van Nieuwenhuis is out, and Qingying of China is out, and that is a long way out. I can't understand why the team personnel down at the bottom aren't way up in the tunnel ready to try and help the sled slow down.
Well, how high does she get here in 10? Pretty much.
Not much higher is possible, John, unless you're going to go straight through the roof. Yeah.
A little airborne there. There's a little bump there, you know, and there she bumped twice. Yep. But good speed in the bottom. That's what got her in the field. So, great seeing two sleds from Australia.
This is Kim Yuran of Korea, 29 years old now. 3 World Cup races last year. Best was 4th place in Koenigsegg, but she was only 11th here. So I'm guessing she's going to give away a little at the start.
Yeah, she's 14th best start in China, so knowing the numbers here, probably a 6:01, 6:02. That's about the norm for 13, 14 best starts, 6:15. Wow, that's way slower than she was in when she finished 13th in China. She was the 14th best start.
Well, there has only been one slower start than that in the field so far, and that was Amber House at 6:16.
Well, there's one of the worst drives off 6th, up top. Oh. That's a bad exit.
Yeah, dragged it very late off the trisel, very low.
See, she does here in the labyrinths. There's nothing here that says she's going to qualify, Martin.
Nope.
This looks like the back of the field. Well, when you have the
22.
22nd best start, 24th best finish, not a good drive down the track.
I'm sure that some of the drivers are not getting on the brakes, John, before they get into that final corner.
Yeah, but they drove
when you come across the finish line. Yeah, I know.
Is it maybe the track's faster or something? But
I'm sure the track is faster, but no, I know.
They only got four or five sleds have not gone up into the rubber like that at the end. Look at the head here, Martin. Watch the head on there. This is what the pressure does to you. Look at that. Got on the take on there, and
just get punched in the head by the cowling. Yeah. And I'm sure the eyes and the brain adjust for that, and she barely notices it until she watches it come back. Now then, for Nigeria, Simi Adiagbo, 40 years old, 10th overall in the Monobob World Series, raced in the North American races last year in Park City and Lake Placid. And I'm trying to think now, has she driven bobsled in Innsbruck? Not at World Cup level.
And she's America's Cup. She might have been on the, might have done the Europa Cup, but or that wasn't a. She's got a good track and field background, Martin, but that push off the blocks looked a little light. But
6:06.
13th, yeah, that's respectable. I mean, that's a good enough start to get her into the field.
Well, she came very late in her sporting career to bobsleigh, really just picked it up before the last Winter Games in Pyeongchang. And actually, John, I think Pyeongchang is the only time you and I have watched her race. Because she didn't do World Cup races before that. Everything was North America based.
A couple of mistakes up top have put her in 20th position already, Martin. She's going to struggle to make this cut. Late there, and she pays the penalty. Really low in that curve. She steered too much in 10.
Well, all of these European tracks are going to be relatively unfamiliar to her if she's seen them all at all. But at least she gets to stay here and have another week of practice. 56.53. Graham Richardson, the Canadian coach, rushing up to help. Again, I think the athletes need to be doing what they normally do in a bobsleigh, which is brake after the finish line before the last corner.
I'm sure they all know up top. They just aren't able to do it. Different ice makeup at the bottom and the finish straight that not allowing the brakes to grab. Here, bouncing around a lot in the sled, hitting the sidewalls. It all adds up.
So 25 sleds down. Lara Nolte, Alana Mars-Taylor tied for the lead. 300s covers the medals. This is Lydia Hunko of the Ukraine, the 28-year-old, raced monobob last year in Altenburg only. But we saw she was 21st in the World Championships. Hugely exciting. She's racing monobob here. The first Ukrainian female bobsledder at World Cup level, we believe.
I think that there was a women's World Cup team. I was looking, but I didn't pay enough attention deep into my files, Martin. I think there was one back in either the 6 to 10 or 10 to 14 era. So she's 26th best start. Going to be pretty hard unless she's got some magic eyes and hands to drive herself out of 26th best speed.
Ooh. Again, brought it down early out of the Kreisel. Sitting very low in the sled, John, which is ideal. She's looking around the cowl as she's coming into the turns.
One of the larger athletes too, so she sits in that sled nice, Martin. But
yep.
Doesn't do anything. That hit hard before the finish. 2+ seconds off the top.
That'll rattle her fillings.
Yeah.
Well, she will not be in the second heat. Right now on the bubble, still Martina Fontenev hanging by a thread.
The only person that didn't make the field is King Ying from China, who had the 11th best start, Martin. Everybody else has got 20 starts. Has a lot to do with why they're not making the cut. And Ukraine. Well, here comes
Two to
the
go.
Dutch slider.
Yeah, Karin Schlepper disappointed not to get a chance to race in the World Cup races here last year. She did the non-World Cup race here, finished third. Yeah, she's a former brakewoman. And she's been driving these sleds now for a couple of seasons. She has got plenty of potential.
I see on the China start list, she was in the race. She was disqualified, Martin, meaning she must have been overweight when they weighed the sled at the bottom after the first heat. 1 kilo over. Our research team in the truck's telling us 1 kilo.
I'm not sure Martin Verstrata, the director's ever been called a research team before, but hey, he knows.
He's research team just a little late there. But this is still top 11, top 12, even with the almost on my head, 13. Well,
right,
if you can't, if you can't win, make it exciting.
Starting place, that's a good run.
You know, as I said, Martin,
Carleen has got lots of potential, John. You know, she was a quick, strong brakewoman, and that's what you need. If they can learn to drive, then that is the golden ticket.
Well, if you can't win, make it exciting. This is pretty exciting up there. We're in no man's land. There's no runners up there. You probably won't see too many sets of runners up there. Anybody goes higher than her is going to be upside down.
Yeah, but she got late out of 10.
For us,
and yeah, you never get back.
Hey, she's in the field.
There. She is. She's well in the field, in the top half.
A Chinese
and
athlete.
Our final sled, Victoria Chernanska. That, by the way, as Carleen Schlepper is in, punts out Martina Fontenev. So you're right, John. Wai Ming Ming or Victoria Chernanska of Slovakia will be our final slider.
Same kind of start. 26th best start. I'm betting on the Chinese right now.
She finished 18th in Altenburg, so she made the cut in the World Championships, and she finished 7th here in the non-World Cup race. 7th of only 8 sleds, but she still knows how to get a monobob down here, so she could do it.
I don't know, Martin. Still got 26, 26 and all the numbers. She's going to find some kind of afterburner here or look for that Austrian shortcut, because good lines. Still falling off on the time.
Yeah, without the speed at the start,
It doesn't matter. She
she's
got good lines.
not making the progress. So Wai Ming Ming can start to breathe again. She is in, and Victoria Chenanska is out. So there will be no Slovakian sled in the second heat. So 8 of our sliders only get to watch heat 2. The remaining 20 will be up at the top of the track, trying to polish the grit out of their runners and get themselves set and resettled for heat 2.
Martin, I'll say that both Chinese sleds had the 11th best start time, so that tells you where their program's at. They know they got to bring athletes to the sport to compete, and I would dare say those two athletes are going to make a top 10 noise by the time we get to the Olympics. Look how fogged up her visor is right there.
Yeah. She needs to have that open a crack. Otherwise, you're driving in the fog, aren't you? Completely blind. So we have a tie for the lead after the first heat. Germany's Lara Nolte. She sets the new track record this morning. 8 sled out of the box. And then the 19th sled out of the box tied that start record. Alana Myers-Taylor starting a fraction quicker than Lara Nolte. And we have a dead heat. 300ths of a second cover our top 3. And our top half dozen covered by 1300s. 1500s, 210s. Back to Melanie Hassler in 8th. That's where the medals will come from. Hassler could sneak in and grab something. Melissa Lottholtz maybe, but it looks like maybe the top half dozen are going to be battling for those places. Wai Ming Ming will be first off as we go 20-1 in our second heat. The remaining 8 sliders will be watching from trackside, and you can join them with myself and John Morgan as we get ready for the second and deciding heat of the first Women's Monobob World Cup of the season. We are on air at 10:30 Central European, 09:30 Greenwich Mean Time, and that is the delightful hour of 04:30 Eastern. We'll see you then.